The Maple Leafs sweep the weekend games and have their sights set on 6 in a row against the Sharks, with possibly a Schenn brother to boot. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike Distefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. What's going on, brother? How are you feeling on a Wednesday coming off that electric weekend that was of hockey?
Wednesday? You mean Monday?
I don't know why I said Wednesday. Monday is clearly what I meant to say. Coming off the weekend. Yeah. Someone's got to come to the Mondays, Dave, and it's I. I'm praying that's Wednesday because that'd be one step closer to the NHL trade deadline, buddy.
It would be.
Coming up, a few days away.
What a week is going to be. Yeah, I mean, like, it's
we
kind
finally saw a big trade, right? Seth Jones gets dealt in the middle of like hockey night in Canada. He goes to the Florida Panthers, which I thought actually both teams made out pretty well with that deal. I think that getting the retention was key for Florida, getting that number down to $7 million, and they had to give up a premium asset in a first-round pick. And Spencer Knight's obviously a soured prospect at this point, but he wanted to change the scenery. I thought it was actually a decent little trade, something that I don't think the Leafs would have been able to pony up for and get out of Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like when I saw, I kind of had a feeling like Florida was going to be the team, right? It just all seemed to be lining up that way. I didn't see Spencer Knight being the piece going the other way.
But it made sense from a cap perspective. Yeah. Like when I went, I saw Seth Jones traded to the Florida Panthers. The first thing I did was take a look. Okay, what do the Florida Panthers have to add to make it work cap wise? And I was like, yeah, maybe Spencer Knight. Like outside that, it was what are they gonna give? They can't really give up any of their roster pieces. They're not going to give up Rodriguez. They're not going to give up, any of the defensemen that are there currently that are of any value that have significant money on their contract. So it kind of just made sense from a money perspective to include Spencer Knight in this deal.
It just seemed like if you're Chicago, you get a first round pick out of it, but like you got to start also building forward, right? Like, there's a reason why you're in this position. You just don't have enough talent at NHL talent on the roster, right? Like goaltending is one of them, right? They don't have goaltending that's going to compete, and if you get a chance, like for Florida, it's like. Spencer Knight, as you said, is an asset that was kind of declining because he's stuck behind Bobrovsky, and you're not moving Bobrovsky. So for Chicago, it's like, all right, we know they've been kind of looking for a goalie, and when you get a chance to get a goalie like this, especially one that's still relatively young and you think is the guy of the future, right? 23 years old, it's a pretty good bet if you're Chicago, and if you're Florida, it's like, okay, well, gives a chance to use a player like Knight to go out and get a Jones. Like it did make a lot of sense. Now it's a matter of, for Chicago, it's like, how do we make it worth our while to give up the retention? That to me was like, you're stuck with this for the next 5 years. But I guess for them, it's like, well, the cap's going up. We're not paying any players really a significant chunk of change right now. Yeah, so might as well weaponize the cap space and get that first round pick on top of it.
Yeah, I think it was well worth it. I think it was a well worth deal, and it makes Florida a lot deeper, especially on the blue line. I'll tell you that for free. That's a strong blue line now. You add in a minute muncher like Seth Jones, and things kind of fall into place a little bit easier, a little bit better if you're if you're Florida. Kind of fills in the void that was left by Brandon Montour a little bit, when he departed through free agency. So I thought it was a good move, and I wonder if Toronto will be able to respond with a move of their own. Some news coming out over the weekend that they are still in hot hot pursuit now, and Brayden Schenn might be the biggest trade target of all. We'll get into that conversation a little bit, Dave, but why don't we kind of break down what we saw on the ice from the Buds over the last couple of games here. They had a 3-2 win over the New York Rangers, a 6-5 thrilling victory over the Pittsburgh Penguins in overtime. It wasn't pretty, Dave. Neither game really pretty, but guess what? The Leafs found a way to get it done, and that's what good teams do. They find ways to win games and stack up points, and that's exactly what the Leafs did this weekend.
Yeah, just if you're a person that likes defense, you did not like what the Leafs did this weekend. If you're somebody who likes goals, you definitely liked what you saw this weekend, especially Sunday against Pittsburgh, because I guarantee majority of people who probably thought, oh, shoot, the game is on in the afternoon, let me turn it on, and you already thought it was 2-0 Leafs. It's like, all right, look like you're in control. End of the period, it's Leafs are losing. Leafs are losing 3-2. And that game ended with 11 goals.
Yeah, it was quite the game. Quite the eventful Sunday afternoon for Leaf fans, that for sure. But hey, man, like I said, though, like good teams find a way to win those games. And Craig Berube said the same thing against the Rangers. Like they weren't the better team on Friday either, and they found a way to squeak out the win. I think you look at it, great goaltending from Anthony Stolarz in that game against the Rangers. You can make the argument that Stolarz goalied New York, which how many times has the shoe been on the other foot, right? Whether it was Georgiev back in the day or Shesterkin has definitely goalied Toronto in the past. All shoes on the other foot. Stolarz out here, making big stops left, right, and center, winning this game, goalieing the Rangers to get a full 2 points out of the Leafs. And then the Penguins, really, again, it was a pretty sloppy game, but you got secondary scoring, 6 different goal scorers for the Maple Leafs, including another one by a defenseman in Connor Timmins. That's now 7 goals in 7 games by Leafs Blue Liners. And you got timely scoring. You score the first goal of the game. That's great. That's nice. You get things going. And then obviously the biggest one of all is Matthew Nye scoring with 0.1 seconds left on the clock to take the lead at the end of the second period. You can't get much better than that, Dave.
Yeah, that was probably one of the crazier sequences, considering I'm sure many people saw the time left and is he going to shoot? Please tell me he's going to shoot. Shoot the puck, shoot it. And then he gets it off and it's credit to the broadcast for knowing right away that he scored, because I'm sure somebody had the real-time clock and they knew it crossed the line before. I don't know if you would have been able to predict that close. But kind of just also speaks to how bad the goaltending was, that if you were Blomqvist, you had to have known a shot was coming. You had to be ready for a shot. And he wasn't ready for the shot. Credit Nyes, that was an absolute missile that he shot. But kind of just spoke to the nature of this game. Absolute chaos.
Yes, chaos is the word that I would use. And defense was definitely not mandatory in this one. And goaltending, not a great night from either side. And Joseph Woll, I will consider it an off day because Woll's played very well. As a tandem, both goalies have been playing great, but it just sucks that, 2 nights prior, you see Anthony Stolarz stand on his head for the Leafs, getting them the win. Yeah, Stolarz got the victory, but it's against, a much worse Panthers team. And it wasn't because of him. It was because the Leafs had to go out there and score 6 goals, and they had to score 6 goals to get the win. Needed every bit of those 6 goals. Joseph Woll won just 29, stopped just 29 and 34 saves for an .853 save percentage. And, there wasn't a lot of tough goals either. So just kind of a tough night for Anthony Stolarz. And I don't know, to use it, was this the kind of the type of weekend where, last week we heard from Craig Berube, the coach of the Leafs, and he said he wanted someone to grab the net eventually, right? Figured at some point someone's got to grab the net for game 1 of the playoffs. I wonder if what we witnessed this week, Stolarz had back-to-back starts, played really good Tuesday, played great Friday, And then all of a sudden, Joseph Wool comes out after not playing for a whole week and lays a little bit of an egg here in this one. And now all of a sudden, it's like, okay, maybe Stolarz is officially in the driver's seat here when it comes to this Leafs goaltending tandem.
I think he's putting himself ahead of the race, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But one thing I've come to know, if you think that one weekend will determine it, you're probably kidding yourself. You probably need to give it a little bit of time. But I think ever since he's come back, he's been absolutely exceptional, right? I don't think he's lost since he's come back from his surgery. So I mean, like that's a heater, right? Top save percentage among starters right now in the league. So there's a lot to like with Stolarz's game. Now I do want to see how this can continue, and I think if you're Wool, yeah, maybe there's probably a little bit of pressure now because there is that bit of a challenge put out by the coach to have a guy kind of take the reins. And Stolarz is also a vet, right? He's been around a bit. I know he hasn't been around as a starter, but he kind of knows the deal. And so I think that gives him the inside track in a lot of ways. I think there's just a lot more confidence in his game right now. I think Wall, this was not an easy game. There was a lot of breakdowns defensively. So you'd like for him to be better. The Crosby goal that he scored, I know it's Sidney Crosby, but it's a goal you can't allow. But I think eventually you're gonna Wool. I'm not concerned about. It's more so like, let's see how much Stolarz can really push things right now.
Yeah, totally. And as you mentioned, undefeated since his return. He's 4-0, the .925 save percentage, and a .247 goals against. So Stolarz playing some pretty solid hockey since his return. And there was that 2-week layoff that was also in between his first and second start back. So, he even had to miss for another 2 weeks after 6 weeks and then still continued. So this just might be what Anthony Stolarz is now, which I think is really, really good if you are a Maple Leafs fan. Couple of milestones happened in this game as well, Dave. We saw Connor Timmins did score a goal, which maybe is a milestone in itself. But no, we saw Austin Matthews reach 700 career points today. So Austin Matthews now with 700 career points, and he also passed for second all time. Why am I blanking? Who's
Daryl Sittler?
Daryl Sittler for second all time in goals by a Maple Leaf, and now trails only Matt Sundin. And hey, he's not too far off too. I don't think he'll get there this year, but certainly next season we have a great chance to break that record. So Austin Matthews continuing to ascend in the Maple Leafs record books with a goal and a helper in last night's win over the Pittsburgh Penguins with Kyle Dubas in attendance, which is always just a little cherry on top for those Leaf fans out there. Anything else from this weekend you wanted to note before we move on to Brayden Schenn and look ahead to tonight's Sharks game?
No, I think it was. I know it's not the weekend, maybe the effort you want to see against the Penguins, but I think just another one of those. You just take the wins right now because the Atlantic Division ain't getting easy. It's getting tough. Both Toronto, Tampa, and Florida just been on heaters right now.
Yeah, you got to keep winning to keep up with the Joneses. You're not really extending your lead at this point. It's just keeping up with what's going on around you. So yeah, absolutely. So thankfully the Maple Leafs, they've won 5 in a row here. They'll be looking for 6 in a row tonight against the San Jose Sharks. We'll see. They return to host Macklin Celebrini and the Sharks, so they're back home at Scotiabank Arena. We'll see if they can continue their roadways at home. Previously, they were not playing great at home before the Four Nations break. We'll see if they can kind of crack that trend tonight with the Sharks coming to town, the lowly Sharks, I might add. Also on the other side, let's talk a little bit about the big report of the Maple Leafs' heavy pursuit of Braden Schenn, possibly to be the apple of their eye come deadline time Friday at 3 p.m. We'll talk about that and more coming up next here in the Locked On Leafs podcast.
Today's show is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. And if you're like me, who kind of likes a little bit of convenience, they have the perfect grab and go snack for busy days. Little packages that are good for road trips. You want to have some at your desk, or you just need a quick protein boost. They're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more.
The Locked On Leafs podcast continues with Mike Distefano and Dave Morassutti. We are with you each and every day for a brand new episode of the Locked On Leafs podcast every weekday, Monday through Friday, free and available wherever you get your podcasts and also up on YouTube. We would ask if you enjoy what you're listening to today and want to come back for daily Maple Leafs coverage, make sure you subscribe wherever you get a podcast and also up on YouTube. That would be greatly appreciated. The Maple Leafs back in action tonight. They are back home after a 4-game road trip where they went 4-0. They're now 5-0 coming out of the Four Nations break, looking to make it 6 wins in a row tonight for the first time this season. If they can beat the San Jose Sharks, we'll get to that in just a minute. But some big news over the weekend here, Dave, when it comes to the Maple Leafs and what they possibly could be up to at the NHL trade deadline, which is fastly approaching later this week. Friday at 3 p.m. is the deadline. What's the big name we found out that the Leafs are in heavy pursuit of?
Well, it's a name that everyone's familiar with, and every single time we bring up the trade deadline, every person in the comment section says Brayden Schenn.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? The Leafs are definitely thinking very hard about Braden Schenn, according to Elliot Friedman during Hockey Night in Canada. His exact quote: "He is definitely a guy Toronto is thinking about very hard."
Yeah, I think Dreger had some similar sentiment, as did Chris Johnston on the CJ show. So, the insiders definitely have that information that the Leafs are hot on Braden Schenn. It's whether or not they want to pull the trigger. And as of now, it doesn't appear that the Maple Leafs are willing to meet the price, or else a deal probably would have been done by now. Yeah. But Andy Strickland, beat writer out in St. Louis, says he believes that the ask right now is the Leafs 2026 first round pick and another prospect. Whether that means it's the top tier prospects like a Fraser Minton or an Easton Cowan or a Ben Danford, or is it maybe a secondary prospect like a Nikita Grabankin or a Dennis Hildeby or a Noah Chadwick? That remains to be seen. But it does appear that that's the current price right now, the Leafs 2026 first rounder and a prospect of some kind. So I believe it'll get done. I actually do. I think Braden Schenn will be a Toronto Maple Leaf by 3 p.m. on Friday. I think they'll figure it out. I don't believe that they're going to give up one of Minton, Cowan, and Danford along with a 2026 first. I think you got to pick one or the other, like one of those 4 you can get, and then you can take one of those secondary prospects along with it in a package. Mm-hmm. But I don't think you get a prospect and a first round pick as well for Braden Schenn, because there's some risks to this deal, right, Dave? This isn't a slam dunk acquisition, right?
For me, it's like you're not getting a guy who's 28, 29, and a guy who's 33. And yes, I know that right now a lot of people are saying that he's still he's in pretty good shape. He hasn't lost a step. But you're also talking about a player who signed at $6.5 million until he's 36. Those are things you have to consider when you're making a deal like this, right? Now we know that Craig Berube pretty much put out the love fest for Braden Schenn when they were asking about Schenn playing his 1,000th game. It was a good chance for Berube to give his thoughts on it. I understand the appeal for Braden Schenn. And even just the name aside, I think there's a lot to like about him as a player. And something that someone told me, the only I guess downside to a Brayden Schenn is that he's a left shot. I didn't really consider that. But I'm like, yeah, the Leafs don't really have a that right shot center. It's more so for the face-off matchups. They just don't have that guy. Tavares and Matthews are both lefties, right? So that
Kampf
too. Like if Calle Jarnkrok was the 3C option, right? Then he's a right shot right there. So you could consider that.
And Willie's been, a guy who's come in to take draws on the right side.
Yeah.
Like they have guys may not be, right shot center, but they are right shot forwards who will take shots when they're on the right side of the ice. Right. So there has been that, but ideally, the Leafs would like to. I think that's why like Nick Bukestad and Jake Evans' name keeps getting brought up as depth adds, because those guys are right shot defensemen or right shot centermen.
And I'll say like that's not going to be a reasonable a stickler for me. Now, the one thing that Brayden Schenn again helps in one way is you at least have some idea of your future at center because he is signed for the next few years. Because if you're going to go out and get a player, do what Vegas has done and get a guy who's signed for a few years, right?
Well, Dave, the difference is they got Jack Eichel, who was 26.
Well, I'm thinking more like when they got Thomas Hertl.
How old's Thomas Hertl? I think even Thomas Hertl's only like 30 himself. Like he's 31. He would have been 30 at the time they acquired him. So, like 30, you still got a couple of years of pretty good hockey. At 33, where you're acquiring Brayden Schenn, you just don't know how much longer he's going to have those boots for. And to me, that is a little bit of a risk. I think this year it works, but going forward, do you really want to have like 34-year-old, 35-year-old John Tavares and Braden Schenn at 33, 34 years old as like your middle six center grouping? I don't know. It could be, very questionable. Now there's the thought process that maybe Braden Schenn could fill in for Tavares next year. And if you move on from JT, or if JT gets moved to the wing, okay, so you've got Brayden Schenn who can give you second line minutes if you don't fully find someone to replace that. So there's, another reward, I guess. Like you look at, positives and negatives. There's a positive for Brayden Schenn. He can play 2C or 3C depending on what role he's asked to play. I think this year he'll be a perfect 3C for a run, but maybe they ask of him to go move up if Tavares either doesn't sign or gets pushed out to the wing. But I don't know, like it's interesting because like I said, I can kind of talk myself into this deal and out of this deal depending on what the return is. Like again, if it's a first round pick plus Minton or plus Cowan or no, I'm not into it. I don't think that Brayden Schenn is that good of a player, especially taking on the risk of that contract to be giving up top tier assets like that. But if it's a future one and one of the secondary prospects, that I could possibly reason with and take the gamble because the cap is going up.
Well, that's it, right? The cap is going up, but we're also, talking about a player who hasn't scored more than 70 points since 2018.
Yeah, he's got 12 goals and 37 points through 61 games this year. Not quite game breaking.
He's being brought in more to help with your defensive side and take a little bit of the load off of Matthews and Tavares, who, as we have seen, it's taken a bit of a toll on them to not have that. They have had to play a lot of matchup minutes. You don't want to play matchup minutes. You want to free them up a little bit offensively, right? And Brayden Schenn, that's what it is for me. He is a gamer, right? We've heard a lot about that. Now, some people says, well, then why don't you just go out and get a Scott Lawton? Well, I think Lawton's going to cost an even prettier penny because he is a bit younger. And Philly
I don't. I think Brayden Schenn's the far more expensive piece. Oh, yeah, no. I think Brayden Schenn would cost way more than Scott Lawton.
I mean, I keep hearing Scott Lawton. It's like a first plus because that's what Philly wants.
Well, that's what Schenn wants, but the plus I think is a lot more. But regardless,
it's possible. I mean, they both have. I mean, I think obviously.
Scott Laughton is a 40-point player, where Schenn at least gives you like a ceiling of like 60 or so points. So it would make sense that Schenn would be worth a little bit more. But
do you think it's a lot more though?
I do. Personally, I do. Yeah. Like, I think that for Scott Laughton, I think if a team gets real desperate, they might give up like a first rounder, like a late first. But I think you're looking more like a second and a B-level prospect for him. Like, Toronto's got Florida's second round pick. Could they package up like that second rounder, like a 2025 second and Nikita Grabankin? Could that work for Scott Laughton? I think it could.
Okay, so you're viewing this more. I mean, look, I think if you're Philly, if you feel like a team can get your first round pick, go for it. But I find the Leafs, at least that with Brayden Schenn, you get him for a few more years at that cost certainty. Laughton only has one more year left on his deal. And the one thing about Schenn that I kind of prefer a bit more is he's got that playoff experience.
Yep.
I know it was a little while
with
ago.
Berube at that, with Berube.
Yeah. Like there's that obvious fit with Berube.
Yeah.
And he'll get the most out of Schenn. I truly believe that.
Yeah. I agree, which again, I would guarantee you that Doug Armstrong knows this and is, he knows that.
Oh, he's leveraging that big time for sure.
Right? Someone's in Brad's ear saying, I like this kid. Let's get him. It's almost like a tag team. It's like, hey, you should listen to your coach there. Brad, you should listen to your coach. Go come get yourself our captain. Pay up, pal. It feels like that could potentially happen, but we'll see. We'll see. Again, trade deadline coming up on Friday, 3 p.m. On tomorrow's show, I actually want to go through a list of like our top 10 wants, right? Top 10 wants for what we want the Maple Leafs to do. And maybe like what does an all-in deadline look like for the Maple Leafs? I think we could possibly put together a good little list for that as well. So I think we'll do that on tomorrow's show. We'll keep the trade deadline conversation rolling all throughout the week until the Maple Leafs make that big move, whether it happens tomorrow, what happens on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. At some point, I expect for them to make a splash. On the other side, Dave, Leafs back in action tonight, looking for a 6th straight win with the Sharks coming to town. We'll preview that game next here in the Locked On Leafs podcast. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike Distefano, David Morassutti with you guys on a game day. Maple Leafs back home after a 4-game road trip. They won all 4 games. They've won 5 in a row here, and they've actually won 8 of the last 9 games, dating back to them leaving for that West Coast road trip prior to the Four Nations face-off. But before that West Coast trip, they were at home for quite some time there in mid to late January. Things weren't going well, Dave. The team couldn't score at all when they were on home ice. They were losing a lot of games, and they couldn't get going on the power play. The penalty kill was one of the worst in the league on home ice. Things have turned around, right? But can they continue to do it at home? Because they've been winning games on the road, but now they come back home. They're on night 2 back-to-back. Yes, it was an afternoon a game going into a night game, so you get a little bit more rest than usual. How do you like this game to play out tonight, Leafs and Sharks?
I mean, you're going up against a team that has been very bad. Like San Jose, like I know they got some exciting players, but if I'm looking here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in a row they've lost.
Is that good? I don't.
They lost 8-3 to the Stars.
They're due, Dave. So they're due. This is a bit of a trap game, though, isn't it?
Oh, for sure.
It is a bit of a trap game. Coming back
with
home.
The way the Leafs have played the last couple of games, they haven't exactly put their best foot forward. Like, I get it. The Sharks stink, but we've seen games like this before where the team just kind of lollies. Like Ottawa beat them. They had to play like a full healthy lineup and at their best.
Mm-hmm.
Montreal needed the overtime to beat them. Like even Winnipeg needed a comeback win to beat them in overtime. Like, it's not. I know the Sharks have lost a lot of games, but there's been a lot of close games that they've played too.
Oh yeah, like you look at that 8-game losing streak that they have. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the 8 games have been 1-goal games, right? 1 goal, 1 bad bounce away from them winning 5 of those games, right? But instead, they've got 1 win in their last 10. So yeah, the Sharks are not a very good team. And why don't we put up the game preview and we can kind of break down, how bad of a team they actually are, right? Take a look at the San Jose Sharks are 15, 37, and 9 on the year. They're dead last in the NHL. 5-on-5 expected goals also down at the bottom, 42.87%. So they're absolutely getting worked whenever they're out there. The goaltending has been abysmal, giving up 3.7 goals per game. That's nearly a full goal per game more than what the Maple Leafs have been giving up at 2.87. So, this is a team that Toronto should obviously absolutely crush. But again, it's one of two things. It's either going to be, a tight loss, a heartbreaking loss, or it's going to be 0.9 for Toronto. I really don't see it being anywhere in between, if you ask me. It's either going to be a blowout for the Leafs, or they're going to lose by a goal in overtime or by a stupid bounce or something like that. That's just how it's going to happen. It's always how it happens, Dave.
Oh, I mean, it's kind of be how things have gone for this team. I look back to, when they played Carolina, right? It looked like they're going to blow them out of the wire. And then, like, we got the tale to two halves of what this Leafs team could be like. Blow them out of the wire in the first period. Then you leave the door open for them to make the comeback. Like, that to me is kind of, I think, how this game could go. Like, the Leafs could get off to a really good lead. And then it's like, no, maybe don't take your foot off the gas. The one thing I will say, though, the Leafs, if I'm not mistaken, improved to 27-0 leading after 2 periods. So if you get a lead through 2, I like their chances.
Yeah.
The one thing I don't want to see from this Leafs team is allowing the Sharks to kind of come in and dictate the play a little bit. Like, I want to see the Leafs at home kind of do what they did against Carolina, get off to a good start, establish their game rather than having to play a comeback sort of game.
Yeah, I mean, and they should be able to. Like, they should be able to push this team around both physically and skillfully. I mean, let's take a look at the Sharks and lineup going into the game tonight, Dave. There's not a lot of stars over there, and it's a reason why the team has 15 wins on the year. Take a look at the top line. Yep, you've got Macklin Celebrini, and that's going to be the main celebrity, big star player to watch for the San Jose Sharks tonight. The first overall pick this past year. He's been real solid, and I think there's a lot of excitement to see what Celebrini can do for the first time taking on the Maple Leafs. He's got Will Eklund and Toffoli with him, Wenberg, Zetterlund, and Smith. Klim Kostin with Nico Sturm, and Graf, Barclay Goodrow, Ty Dellandrea, and Luke Cunnin. And then defensively, you're looking at Wallman and Liljegren. So Timmy Lills makes his return to Toronto for the first time. Mario Ferraro and Shakir Makhmadulin, Jack Thompson, and Mark-Edward Vlasic still playing in the
Still
NHL.
kicking around.
And then we'll have either Georgiev or Vanacek in goal for the San Jose Sharks as well. So it's just not a good team, and it's a reason why they have not won a lot and why they're going to be, in the lottery and possibly, get the number 1 pick again this year. And look, Toronto should take advantage. I get it. It's the third game in 4 nights, so you don't know what you're gonna, you never know what you're gonna get from that case. And you got cross-border travel from Pittsburgh back into Canada and into Toronto. But that's not a lineup that Toronto should be losing to at this point in the season.
No, and the one benefit, I guess, with the back-to-back is you at least had the 1:00 start.
Yeah.
So you got a chance to come back to Toronto early, hopefully. No bad weather or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, this Sharks team, that blue line might be one of the worst blue lines I've seen in a long time.
It's not good.
It had Cody Ceci on it at one point. Like that was considered at least Cody Ceci could play top 4 minutes. he can take some minutes off.
Yeah.
Like that to me is where I like, if you're ever wondering, the Sharks look like they got some good players. That blue line is going to be the biggest, the toughest thing that this team is going to have to build over the next few years. And if I'm the Leafs, like, you got to be salivating that matchup. You just put up 6 goals against Pittsburgh. I know Pittsburgh isn't good, but they're better than San Jose. You scored 6 on them.
Yeah, Georgie 5 in there possibly. I mean, 5 spot waiting to happen. We'll see.
Yeah, I think this is just a prime matchup for Leafs to take advantage.
Well, they'll at least have one fresh body in the lineup. Calle Jarnkrok set to make his season debut tonight, finally returning after sports hernia surgery back in
groin.
Yeah, hernia and groin. And it's something that occurred in training camp and has kept him out all season long. And it's kind of like a nice little deadline acquisition, right? You're bringing in kind of a bottom 9 player, and it's the type of guy that I like a lot of teams would add at the deadline, right? A versatile forward who can play up and down your lineup in different situations. Second unit power play, kill penalties. He can take face-offs. He can play on the wing. He can do a lot of different things. So it'll be nice for Jarnkrok, I guess, to get back in, and it's a nice easing in for him, I guess, against the San Jose Sharks in his first game, right?
They made the right decision to wait for this one rather than putting him against that chaos in Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh could have done as well, I suppose. But yeah, at least now you're going to get one pair of fresh legs out there, and
exactly.
And he's been skating, right? He's been skating and practicing, so it's not like he doesn't have his legs underneath him. But there's nothing like the real game itself. So, so Jarnkrok will be back in, and Stolar's going to get the start also with Woll playing the game against the Pittsburgh Penguins. So, 2 fresh new faces. Chris Tanev will not play. He was placed on IR to open up a roster spot for Calle Jarnkrok, who's going to be activated and inserted into the lineup tomorrow. So no Tanev. Well, I believe that was retroactive to Tuesday, so it's possible that he could play Wednesday if he's good to go. Yeah. So that's the only difference that we expect in the Maple Leafs lineup. But obviously, we'll see what happens at the morning skate. All right, that'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at _Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow to recap Leafs and Sharks. They're going for their 6th win in a row. We'll keep you locked in. We'll come back and recap that game tomorrow. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.